I've got 1 o'clock. We've got a quorum. Maybe Mr. Colhase will walk in here in the next few minutes, but I think we should get started. Got a lot to cover. So we call this June 20th, 2024 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. It is 1 o'clock. And let's go through the roll call. I'm Mr. Holland and I am here. Mr. Colhase, I assume, is not online and is absent at the moment. And we have Mr. Alimi, who's sitting in for Mr. Olds. And let the record show that Mr. Colhase just joined us.
Mr. Colhase is here.
He's not late. It's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock. Thanks. Dr. Boland?
Here.
And we have Assemblyman Littlefield in place of Ms. Zalatel.
Here.
So we do have a quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us. Aaron, can you help us out with the public involvement announcement, please?
Of course. AMATS committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is provided an opportunity to comment at each meeting. Business items are first presented by a staff or consultant, then the committee is given an opportunity to ask questions, discuss the business item. After that, the public is invited to formally comment. Each participant will have 3 minutes to speak on their topic. A couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us virtually and you're not a member of the committee, please turn your camera off when you're not speaking on an item. If you're joining us by phone, to mute and unmute, press *6. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Mr. Alimi, seconded by Dr. Boland. Are there any proposed changes? Hearing none, are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. For agenda item number 4, we have before us the minutes from May 16th, 2024 for approval. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Colhase, and Mr. Alimi is sitting closer, so I'll give him the second. Any changes or discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, are there any objections to approving the minutes? Hearing none, the May 16th, 2024 minutes are approved. This brings us to our first action item, which is item 5A, HSIP nominations memo. Aaron, do we have a presentation?
Yes, I will do a quick little overview of this. It's a very exciting item because this is one of the first times to be able to bring this forward to the policy committee on my end, so I'm very happy to do so. So as you may recall, on May 20th of 2024, DOT got together with the TAC and PC in a joint work session to discuss HSIP projects in the TIP. At that meeting, there was a discussion about HSIP nominations that were coming up, and there's a due date of July 1st for them. I do want to note there's actually been a 3-month extension for HSIP nominations, so there's a little more time if additional discussion is needed, but staff felt that bringing these forward for committee approval was still warranted, just based on the discussion with the TAC. So staff brought forward to the TAC a recommendation to the 9 corridors that are in the AMAT safety plan, which you can see up on the screen. The corridors are on the screen right there. These are the corridors that are the priority corridors based on the assessments as part of the safety plan. At the TAC meeting, it was discussed that of the 9, 2 of them were recommended for nomination, and that's DeBar Road from Lake Otis Parkway to Boniface Parkway, and Mountain View Drive from Commercial Drive to Burgaw Street. Burgaw Street itself, the first one up there, A, was not recommended because the municipality of Anchorage is currently seeking a Safe Streets for All grant, utilizing the AMAT safety plan, and it was recommended that we hold off and wait and see what's happening with that grant, and then maybe in a future HSAP nomination cycle, see if we can get that project nominated and coordinated with for that grant. So you kind of use dual sources of funding to help with that project. What also was discussed by the TAC is that of the 2 that were nominated, B and C up there, that DOT, the Municipality of Anchorage, and the Public Transportation Department were to review these corridors and to help refine them into more specific fundable projects. Once that refinement is done, those would come back to the TAC and Policy Committee for review and discussion if there were any oh, you missed this, or you need to add this, that kind of stuff. Because the likelihood that they're going to fund an entire corridor with the HSAP project is pretty low because it is a small pot of funding, but it's recognized that there are distinct locations along these corridors that can be targeted at or targeted for a project with HSIP, so like an intersection improvement or a smaller section of the road. That all has to be looked at in more detail, but the group's already talked about. So, before you today is the recommendation for the nomination of B and C for HSIP funding with additional review for refinement. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? I think I've got just a couple. I think you answered one. One was that I didn't know if nominating corridors was typical, but it sounds like we're going to nominate the corridors, take a look at those problem areas, and then kind of winnow that down to individual projects that will be scored through the HSIP program there. The other question I had was, there were 5 corridors that were identified as priorities in the safety plan, and I don't believe that those are in order of priority or need, or
They are. So
Yeah, okay.
can you switch over to the safety plan real quick, Christine? Can you scroll down to page 57 of the PDF? So these are the 9 corridors right here that are prioritized, first being the most important based on the points that were given to it. So as you can see here, Burgass Street has 28.3 points. So they are in priority order in that regard. Of these 9, only 5 were deep dived into the next section. Can you scroll down to the next page? So yeah, go ahead and stick right there. So there were 5 of these that were done. Basically taking a look of those 9 corridors, 5 of them were looked at for a little more in-depth detail. We didn't have enough funding to do all 9 of them at this time. So we looked at the 5 and these kind of more in-depth details to be like, okay, along this corridor, what are the notable collision patterns? What is the collision history? And then what are some countermeasures that can be thrown out there as possible recommendations? The idea for these were really to just jumpstart the discussion about getting projects, not necessarily defining what the project is going to be in great detail, because they wanted to kind of leave it a little bit flexible, so there could be options. So, okay, HSIP can come fund this portion, AMAS can come, DOT can come do that, and then kind of piecemeal it with the limited funding that's available.
Okay. Makes sense. Any other questions, comments from the committee? None. Are there any comments from the public? I'm seeing none. What is the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Boland, seconded by Mr. Leamy. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none. The motion is approved. On to action item 5B is the 3C process document. I bet you have a presentation for that too.
A little discussion on this, and may need some help with this. So this is going to be a big one, so just kind of hold on for a minute as I get through everything here. So before you today is a document provided to us by Department of Transportation. So as you may remember, this STIP, the recently approved STIP, had some corrective actions associated with it. One of the corrective actions is in the memo before you, Tier 2, 1A corrective action, where DOT must develop and implement process and procedures for the 3C process. So 3C is continuing, cooperative, comprehensive. It's basically the basis of everything we do for transportation planning with our federal funding dollars. So, and it says that these procedures should include DOT's roles and responsibility for oversight of MPOs, procedures for air quality conformity, the UPWP, our work program development, MPO certifications, both TMA and self-certifications that we have to do, STIP development, and other joint planning processes. So DOT put together a document and then met with MPO staff on 2 occasions, May 21st and May 29th, to talk through the 3C document, where some pretty strong feedback was given back by MPO staff. The attached document, can you click over to the document real quick, please, Christine? You may notice that it has some track changes in it. And this is to reflect that staff, last time we met with DOT, these were some of the changes that we were recommending for this document. I want to emphasize something, that we as staff are not the MPO. So we assist the policy committee or policy board, depending on who you are, but we are not the ones who speak for the MPO on matters such as these. So this document is being brought before the technical advisory committee and you, as the policy committee, for your review and feedback on the document itself. You know, a couple things to kind of think about for this document is, does it make sense? Do you kind of understand what it's saying? And do you, as the policy committee, feel that you are going to be coordinated enough or at the right times for these particular documents and processes that are outlined in this document itself? The Technical Advisory Committee had a couple of recommended updates, which you see on the memo, basically recognizing that when the PEB is developed under STIP development, the Project Evaluation Board, that it's a lot to ask the committees to come to the Project Evaluation Board itself, and nobody really understood the role of what the Policy Committee or the TAC was going to do at that PEB. So the TAC is recommending instead to have a presentation from DOT to the TAC and the PC on what projects were prioritized and what were selected as part of that process. And then there was a request for a flow chart to be created on the STIP process to make it a little easier to understand, as it's a little complicated when you read through the document. Staff also has some comments. I can go through them if you want, but I think the two that I really just want to summarize that I think kind of overarches everything, it's really the STIP development section of this document that is a little rough around the edges. All the other pieces are pretty self-explanatory, called out in federal regulations. I think, in my opinion, are cut and dry of how the MPO is going to be involved, or how DOT coordinates with the MPO. The STIP's a little harder, and I think one of the big things is a lot of what's listed in the STIP section is more of a planning level stuff, processes versus programming. You know, for example, it talks about projects are going to be prioritized as part of the STIP development. Well, that's already done as part of the MTP development within the MPO boundary. So is there going to be an additional prioritization process that's different than the MTP that's going to reprioritize the projects in a different way? Like, it's a little more complicated when you start getting into that. And it seems like the STIP development section was kind of an isolated thing when it really should be part of the overall approach that's done as part of the 3C transportation planning from beginning to end. And then the last comment is really specifying that when you call out MPOs in this document, who do you mean? MPO staff or the MPO policy board, policy committee? Because it makes a significant difference. It's fine to coordinate with staff, but that is not MPO coordination. That's not the full extent of MPO coordination. And so it's just trying to get those two big things spelled out here. I'm happy to help walk through any of the other comments that I have here, but to just save time, I think I'll stop there. And I believe DOT is here to help explain more if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Maybe I'll start off with a comment that we had this item at the MVP MPO policy board meeting this week, and I recused myself, but I recused myself there because the MVP staff was looking for the board approval to send a memo to DOT, and that felt awkward to me. So unless there's any objections, I wasn't going to recuse myself today. So I'll stay on. But are there any other comments from the committee? Questions?
Yeah, thanks. So I know that we've talked about the 3 Cs in relation to project off-ramping in the past, and I guess I'm kind of curious if any of that is captured in this document, and specifically around policy committee members having access to information regarding federal payoff. If we say that there's a project that so much design work has gone on, we spent all this money, but traffic demand no longer meets what was predicted, population trends are opposite of what was predicted. How can the policy committee members get accurate information about what federal payback would actually look like? And I guess when it comes to amending projects or canceling projects, what does the 3 Cs look like? Is any of that specified in here?
No, that is not specified in this document itself. I don't really know how to answer that, so maybe if somebody else can answer it, if there are other staff available, if the chair is okay with that.
Yeah, I don't. If we have any volunteers out there, I mean, Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, James. Yeah.
James Starzyk at DOT Central Region Planning. This particular document is focused on the specific corrective action that FHWA sent to us. So while what you're asking for is, it's a valid and useful piece of knowledge of where that information is flowing, it's not necessarily what we're trying to address in this particular document. If that makes sense. You read the corrective action. They're looking for procedures and oversight of MPOs, air quality, UPWP, MPO, STIP development. I mean, these are the boxes we're trying to check to get this document through so that we can continue to do STIP and TIP amendments. Because right now, until we get FHWA an adequate response to these corrective actions, there is no amending MPO TIPs in any of the 3 MPOs or the statewide transportation program.
Can I have a follow-up
Yeah,
question?
please. Yeah.
So I think this document is sort of urgent. What is the process going forward for having that conversation around what the 3 Cs mean when it comes to policymakers being fully informed, that collaborative process? And maybe just, Aaron, for the benefit of, I'll just read right here. It says, continuing cooperative and comprehensive planning process. And I think really to have a cooperative planning process, the policymakers who are the MPO, and speak on behalf of the MPO, have to have robust access to information to make fully formed decisions. And so is there an opportunity in the future to flesh that out, to put some expectations in writing when it comes to what types of information policymakers on the policy committee should have?
It's easy for us to quantify the risk, like any project that we have, we can tell you what we've spent in federal funds to date, and that's I would say that's the highest risk that we have to pay back to the funding agency, whether it's a FHWA or whoever it is. It's always a negotiation, it's very rare that we do that, but we have done it in the past, and it's a negotiation that some of those things can be determined to be participating, but some won't be. But I think it's easy for us to identify the top end of the risk.
So that's interesting hearing that from you, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was not the representation made under former leadership of Central Region, because that was an answer that we really tried at length to get on the sewer highway project time at O'Malley. What would actually be that federal payback expectation? Finally, like some scenarios kind of came forward about what would it would look like to change that project, the nature of that project. And as I know you all remember, we did end up amending the funding in the MTP for that project with the idea to reevaluate what the need is there. So I think we were able to get there eventually, but I just I don't know what. I guess I just want to vocalize. I think it would be helpful to have a little bit more defined expectation for policymakers. And I mean, maybe question for staff: is that something that we can work on? Can that be a future agenda item? Can we get input from maybe the TAC and the other advisory committees?
Yes, so I know that this is, sorry, we're having some issues with sound quality. Everybody is really quiet, so if you could also speak up. Apparently I'm a loudmouth, so it's easy for people to hear me, but not everybody is. So here we go. Hopefully that helps. So yes, there is probably an opportunity in the future to have that kind of discussion. I know that when this document was first drafted, it was 31 pages long and then switched to 41 pages, but it was really narrowed down to focus just on the corrective actions, because it was recognized that it's continuing development. So there's probably going to be additions, edits, changes to it later. And I know that DOT is looking at developing like a planning manual as well, or some other kind of manual about it. So I think there is opportunity for further discussion about that type of information. I'll just remind everybody that the process is a little different for the STIP now, because everything's going to be in the TIP versus both the TIP and the STIP for individual projects. So, you know, if a project wants to receive federal funding, it has to be put into the TIP, and we need to make sure we have enough information to bring a staff to bring to the committees why this project is being added. So I think it may be good for us as an MPO to lay out some groundwork of what you, as committee members, want staff to bring forward when a project is recommended to be added to the TIP, or when we develop a new TIP and put projects in there. So I think there's kind of a dual thing we can do as we move forward.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah. I hope that would not be become a common practice, is to stop a project that you know, that we're working through a NEPA process on, or in that case have final design on, you know. And I don't know, it kind of bothers me a little bit to talk about the and this is a Sean Holland thing, but I've heard that multiple times about the declining population, and that we don't design to accommodate the declining population. But as you know, as a citizen of Anchorage who's pretty heavily invested, I hope that that's not that we're optimistic enough to think that we'll reverse that trend anyway, whether or not it affects traffic anyway. You know, just that's my thought out loud. But
Sure. Well, can I respond? Is that
sure.
okay?
Yeah.
You know, I think traffic predictions are one thing. We have to be nimble enough, though, to be responsive to current need and changing land use patterns. And you know, just because something may have been a good idea at one time, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best idea for the present or the future. And you know, there's so many things that go into that. Wanting to encourage active transportation, and you know, this policy committee made that ambitious step to increase the percentage for non-motorized projects. And yeah, so I think we do have to be able to have honest conversations with the community and be responsive to, you know, when there are large amounts of public input, at least being nimble enough to have that conversation and reevaluate. And I think there are going to be times when we say, you know what, this is no longer the right thing. We spent a bunch of money on it, but we're not going to give into sunken cost. Hopefully, our population does grow. And hopefully, as our population grows, we can be innovative with what we're doing with land use, you know, having more walkable communities, having denser housing. I mean, all of this stuff is holistic. It has to be taken together. And, you know, maybe a highway, adding a lane, a highway expansion is the answer in one context, but not another. And so how can we at least reevaluate when the time comes? I think it's something that would be helpful to have some type of criteria for.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I do feel like, I've said it before, but I feel like we did give up a lot of good things in that Seward Highway project, and you know, whether it's targeting high accident areas for non-motorized users on the frontage roads at Diamond. We gave up we haven't given it up. We have it on the shelf. We're going to retool it, but there's also a snow dump in there that would help us significantly with our if we have another winter like this winter, would have a significant benefit. But anyway. But I feel like we're off track a little bit. Maybe we should.
I think we're still in the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're fine. Would you
Okay.
guys give us just a quick second while we try and get the electronics? People are having a hard time being able to hear any of the committee members.
Okay.
And I think we may have just lost the signal.
So is Christina IT expert or an electrician? I can't tell. So.
May I say something?
Please.
So let's do a test. I tend to speak louder than some other folks. So Brandon Telford, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll project, I promise. So, Where were we? Are there any other questions, comments from the committee on the 3C document? I think I did have a couple more questions if nobody else does. So I understand the process here. So this original document was created by DOT, and it's edited by DOT staff and MPO staff.
Yes.
We have one document that's going to cover 3 MPOs. Are the comments that are made here consistent with what the other MPOs brought forward, or were they coordinated with those
I have
comments,
not
or?
seen all of the policy board's comments for MVP or FAST. I don't know when they're meeting, if they're meeting this week or next week or not. So, and I'm not sure how that's going to work out for. I know that was a comment that was asked at the TAC is there going to be an opportunity for the policy committees, TAC committees, to be able to see the other MPO comments regarding this 3C document? And I don't know if that is built into the schedule or not at this point.
Okay. Do you know the answer to that, James? Or
Through the chair, James Starzik. I do know that MVP and FAST have recently had their policy committee meetings. I've not been told, I've not gotten any information as to the content of their comments, but we are compiling all of these comments and trying to finalize a draft as soon as possible, so that we can move forward with this to FHWA. You know, one thing that we've pointed out a number of times here is that one of the 3Cs here is continuing. And I don't feel that anyone in our department believes that we are going to write up a document, send it to FHWA, it's set in stone, and that's what we've got going forward. We fully intend as planning staff to be revisiting this document very often. We do quarterly MPO coordination meetings with the directors of 3 MPOs, multiple levels of planning staff, FHWA, FTA attendees, and we are planning on making this a standing agenda item at those meetings. So, you know, every 3 months have an opportunity for any of the MPO directors to bring any concerns, give feedback to everyone, all the MPOs, as to how we are developing it, where we see there's opportunities to improve it, get feedback as to how everyone thinks it's being implemented. So, you know, we're trying to make it the best we can now to show FHWA this is a good faith effort on the department's part to meet their corrective items. But certainly do not think this is the end of the road.
And so if I can tell you 3 things that I think I learned from listening to the Technical Advisory Committee meeting, if you can tell me that I'm right, I'll combine them all. So this is a living document, which you just said. My understanding is that this is not critical to getting the current amendment to the statewide transportation improvement program.
No, this is absolutely critical to getting that done.
So we can't submit that until we have this document
Correct.
final. Okay, so I misunderstood that. And then the action requested here is to pass on AMAT's comments to the DOT to incorporate that. Okay. All right.
And there was one thing discussed, if you don't mind, Chair, is adding some kind of language in here about periodic updates of this document, because that is missing from here, about when it's going to be updated next or how often. Is it every year? Is it every 2 years, etc.? So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments come up from the committee? None. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Seeing, hearing none, what is the will of the committee?
Move to forward, I guess, the recommendations provided in blue onto who, Aaron?
To DOT and PF. It's really if you have any other comments, because the ones in blue were already kind of gonna recommended to be changed. So if you have anything above and beyond those comments in blue that are in the document.
And then, before I should ask a clarifying question. So this is, whatever the policy committee recommends today, that goes on not just to DOT, but to, who finally approves this document?
Well, it's a DOT document. I don't know if it's FHWA approves it. I think it's just DOT approves it, and then FHWA reviews it to make sure that it meets kind of the intent of the corrective action. I don't actually know. I think that's what it is, because it's not an actual FHWA approval.
So whether or not these recommendations in blue or anything else that we recommend here today are adopted is up to DOT?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just make the motion to forward on the recommendations that we have here in front of us. And then also a recommendation from the policy committee to have periodic update language in the document as well.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. Moved by Dr. Boland, seconded by Mr. Colhays. Are there any objections to approving the motion?
Real quick, I just want to make sure I know the recommended edits shown are the ones that are in blue in the document before you. Okay.
Any objections? Hearing none, motion is approved. I don't want to jinx us, we're doing better than I thought we would. So. Action item 5C, a letter of commitment for DOT and PF SMART grant. Is there a presentation here?
Yes, this will be, everything's me today until we get to the informational items, so I apologize for that. But okay, so this is a really exciting opportunity that I'm very happy to help bring to you all. AMAT staff was contacted after the TAC meeting about a grant, discretionary grant opportunity that the Department of Transportation is anticipating putting in for. And it is in this letter before you, the SMART grant, Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation. So it's kind of spelled out in the name. It's looking at projects that will help revolutionize what we do for transportation projects, planning, everything. DOT is looking at putting in a grant for an implementation of the Alaska Data Bike Program. The intent here is to leverage data collection technology on bicycles to monitor active transportation facility conditions, improve infrastructure maintenance, and enhance safety across Alaska's extensive path and trail network. What's really cool about this is it's more of a cost-friendly approach to collecting active transportation pavement data. So it's putting sensors on bicycles, having those bicycles use the facilities, and they collect the data as they use it. So I think right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a truck drives along the path and collects the data. So this is kind of a really cool approach that I think brings with it a lot of opportunity for an innovative way to collect this data, to collect it a little more often than we do now, and to use that data and help with project selections. It also is a really cool way to be able to engage with different communities throughout our area to get their help to collect this data. So this letter here is a letter of commitment from AMATS, and part of the commitment is sending a representative to participate on the project team to share information and help coordinate with the MPO, DOT, PF, and the municipality of Anchorage. Just so you know, there are 3 phases to this particular grant. The first is the planning phase, which is what this letter is committing for. That's why there's only a letter or a commitment of a representation to the project team and not actual funding or anything more like that. The second phase, I believe, is actual implementation, and then the third phase is, talking about how it was implemented and success and things like that. Staff is definitely recommending this letter of commitment to the policy committee, as this is a really great opportunity for us to all be engaged in kind of an innovative way to collect data that we sorely need. And there are other people from DOT here who can help answer any questions if you guys want, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Dr. Volk?
Thank you. This is very interesting and kind of top of mind too, because we just had a work session today about a proposal coming before the Anchorage Assembly to regulate e-bikes. I'm wondering, so is this mostly just looking at the conditions of the infrastructure, or when they're talking about safety, if these bikes have, well, what type of like, is there any type of like speed data that can be collected, or is it mostly just focused on the conditions of the infrastructure?
I'm going to say most of the conditions. However, I believe Julius Adolphson with DOT, who is kind of helping with this or running this, is online, who may be able to help answer your question if that is okay with the chair.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Julius, go ahead. Did you hear the question?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Did you hear Member Volan's question?
All right. My name is Julius Adolphson. I am the active transportation planner with Alaska DOT, based at our headquarters here in Juneau. Yes, this project, as it's proposed in the grant application, would only collect the condition of the asset, but it would also, other states have also added a digitizing collection, basically, so that you can use the bike and digitize that path, so it becomes a part of your GIS repository as well. So it's a twofold sort of approach of collecting the facility or assessing the facility essentially, and then number two, digitizing the facility so that we can track on perhaps a annual basis the conditions of that facility, and that can in turn, inform any grant applications or project selection criteria or so on when it comes to replacing or repaving that path.
Any other questions?
I hope that answers your question. Feel free to ask if you have any. If you have any other questions, I'm available.
Please.
That answers that question. Yeah, thank you. I guess my second question would be active transportation facility. Just a little bit like, what are we talking about there? Are we talking about just paved trails? Or are we also talking about sidewalks, streets? Where we have maybe our buffered bike lane.
Yeah, so any facility that can't necessarily be captured with our current method of evaluating the pavement conditions. So it could be a sidewalk, it could be a path. I think a novel thing that we will discuss as well as part of the phase one, the planning phase, is how this could be implemented statewide, and where there might not be pavement paths, so maybe boardwalks or gravel paths as well, and be able to attribute some sort of facility condition to those as well. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? What's the magnitude of the grant application? How much money are we asking for? Do we know?
We're still working on the grant application, okay. And I'm collecting information from other states that have already incorporated these bikes. But I can tell you that it will be probably in the realm of maybe in the $100,000 maybe to $200,000 for the first phase. Okay. And that's getting the equipment and being able to assess the hours attributed to that, and then start a mini pilot essentially of this, and to see how it can be implemented here in Alaska.
Thank you, Julius. Are there any comments from the public? Any questions? Seeing, hearing none, what's the will of the committee?
I'm going to move to forward this letter on behalf of the EMS Policy Committee.
It's moved by Dr. Boland. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Leamy. Do I hear any objections to approving the motion?
I do have one more question, if it's okay, Mr. Chair. Who rides the bikes? How do you get that gig?
It's going to be a challenge, right? It's going to be
Are you interested in volunteering? Is that what I hear?
Oh,
No,
yeah,
just kidding.
for sure.
I envision this. It's a little bit hard to talk about the implementation when we're just at phase one. But my idea is, or my thought is, that we could use local volunteers. We can use interns, or we can use other staff that might project staff that are going from their point of their offices out to a project. Maybe they can hop on the bike instead of taking a car. So I imagine, and I see this project as being very collaborative, and we're that it can be used similar to our active transportation counting equipment, where we lend out this piece of equipment for essentially through a rental agreement, and where engaged stakeholders can use that equipment as well. So but more to come on that when we're there. We haven't quite crossed the bridge yet, but
Great.
Those are the initial thoughts.
Well, I'm going to say that motion is approved. I didn't hear any objections, so motion approved. On to action item 5D. I don't see Mr. Cecil in the room, but it's a resolution for Jon Cecil. Do you want to read through that? Okay.
Yes, I do. So, as you all know, Jon Cecil is retiring from AMATS. He is currently out of the office, but he'll be back next week. And next Friday is his last day. So, as is tradition with AMATS, we get some stuff together for a person who's retiring or leaving us. And the first is a resolution, which you find before you here. And so I just kind of want to read through the resolution, if you can bear with me for a second. So, a resolution of the AMATS Policy Committee recognizing and honoring Jon Cecil for his years of service with AMATS. Whereas Jon's graduated from UAF with a BS in Political Science in 1982, and whereas Jon received his Master's of Public Administration and Public Policy and Environmental Affairs from Boise State University in 2003, and whereas Jon started his career with the Municipality of Anchorage in the Long Range Planning Division in August of 2013, where he worked on the Anchorage Industrial Land Assessment, the Anchorage 2040 Land Use Plan, and staffed the Geotechnical Advisory Committee. And whereas Jon joined AMATS as a senior planner in January of 2018 and concentrated on the travel demand model, freight, and data usage for AMATS, where Jon has been tireless in his efforts to support the freight and non-motorized users within the AMATS area to help evolve the transportation system and enhance the public process. And whereas Jon has helped push forward the evolution of the AMATS MTP with the development of the Vision Eval tool, assisted in the development of the AMATS non-motorized plan, the extensive effort on the TDM study for the UMed district, along with the continued engagement with that community to help implement the plan, and working with the AMATS Freight Advisory Committee. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee recognizes and honors Jon Cecil, and be it further resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee thanks Jon for his years of service to AMATS, and be it further resolved that the AMATS Policy Committee wishes Jon the best in his next endeavors. Passed and approved by the Policy Committee on this 20th day of June. We also will have a little going away party for Jon on Friday, so we're setting that up. And then we have, as is tradition, we have a Hydro Flask that I just got back with an engraving of the AMATS logo and a quick little note for him, and then his years of service with both the Municipality of Anchorage and AMATS. So this resolution is before you today for any edits, comments, changes, and then hopefully approval. I know Jon is not here, but it'll be sad to see him go. But we wish him all the best for everything, and thank him for all of his efforts over the years. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions or comments from the committee? Not seeing any. I'll just say that we'll miss Jon and wish him well. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'll make a comment. We will miss Jon. I mean, he started about the same time I did, and I worked with him in his role before AMATS and on AMATS, and appreciate all the hard work he's put into the various plans and the support of the committee, policy committee, and the advisory committee, and your group, Aaron. So yeah, we'll miss him.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Any comments from the public? I'm not seeing any. What's the will of the committee?
Move to approve.
Second. Seconded by, I can flip a coin, but I'll go with Mr. Colhase. He's closer. So. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. I believe that's the end of our action items.
It is, sir. Thank you.
Excellent. On to agenda item 6A, which is the MOA Long Range Transportation Strategy. assume we have a presentation for that.
It would actually not be me. It will be somebody else. So I can take a quick little break for you. It'll be from the long range planning group at Municipality of Anchorage. Thanks. Go ahead, Dan.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel McKenna Foster. I'm Long Range Planner in Long Range Planning Department. Here to talk today about the Long Range Transportation Strategy, something we've been working on for 6 or 7 months or so. And I'll just kind of go through where we've been, where we're going, where we're at currently. And this project is still in process, so we presented at the TAC last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. And from that, we got some helpful feedback, so we're sort of involved. This is evolving as it goes. Next slide, please. So what is this thing? Why do we need another plan? Well, the purpose of this is policy guidance for local decision making and funding. We have, of course, the AMAT system, which covers Eagle River and a lot of the bowl. Well, all of the bowl doesn't cover Girdwood. So this came out of the sponsors, Assembly members Volin and Zalatel. We're looking for something that had a little bit more comprehensive priorities for transportation investments and management within the entire municipality. And so we were tasked with looking at that and coming up with sort of some basic goals and priorities for what people are looking for. Next, please. So far we've had 5 working group meetings. We have a working group of between 10, 15 people, depending who. We tried to get a pretty wide range of organizations and hope that people could represent different perspectives. We've done a lot of one-on-one working group member interviews with representatives just to feel out, well, what are your needs of your organization for stuff like AARP, talking with the health department. Recently we've been talking more with transit, and just trying to get an idea of what people see from their constituencies of needs in terms of the transportation system, what's working, what isn't. We also did an online survey of 180 people, which for an online survey from the munis is pretty good. We got a lot of feedback from that, got a lot of comments from that. And everything we've done so far and gotten so far is all on the website. So you can go and you can see the good comments, the bad comments, the happy, the sad. Everything is posted on there. You can take the exact export as we had it. And then we had an open house at the library. We went to the transportation fair. We went out to ski bike to work day one snowy morning a couple months ago. And we presented at FCC. Next, please. So a lot of this really comes down to is that people have been talking about long range transportation for basically decades, right? In all of our land use plans, you see people talking about transportation. It doesn't always rise to the level of making the changes that people want to see. So I think a lot of people have been saying, well, we're looking for this kind of change. Why haven't we seen it so far? So this slide is just looking at a sampling from past comprehensive plans or area plans or neighborhood plans. And when people are talking about the stuff that many people would say, well, that's a right-of-way issue, that's a transportation issue. Ultimately, transportation really is a land use, right? Like roads are a use of land. But in the planning world, sometimes it's like, oh, that's a separate issue. But this is really looking at transportation as a land use, and this is dealing with that. So on here, you'll see that, the 2020 comprehensive plan talked about it, Anchorage pedestrian plan, 2035 MTP. But then there's stuff like the Mountain View targeted plan, which said, make Mountain View more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. The East Anchorage district plan. Make East Anchorage safe for walking and biking year round. Anchorage 2040, AMAT's non-motorized, our downtown plan, which just came out a few years ago. And then the 2050 MTP, which also came out. Next, please. So I apologize, you won't be able to see this very well, but if you go to the website, you can just expand these slides for yourself. This is what the survey looked like. So basically, we heard from this working group, we heard from the public a little bit, and then we went out to the survey. We said, well, here's what we've heard. What do you think about, does this represent, something that you think is important or something that you would consider a priority? So this was, it was a long survey. When we got that comment, people say, oh, this is too long. But transportation is a big deal, and how we invest in our infrastructure is, unfortunately, it's a complicated, sort of complex process, but so we sort of erred on the side of more complexity rather than less, just to get that out there. So you'll see here, these are rankings. They're ranked by SurveyMonkey. And so when people say, I would rank this one higher than this one, overall it sort of aggregates that and gives you which are the things that came out, the sort of top level, highest priority. Some of them you'll see, it's pretty flat. So a lot of people, more or less, they kind of liked all of those things. Some of them, they liked some more than others. Next slide, please. So at this point, we've sort of gotten down to 5 major goal areas. And some of this actually came, the first one especially came from talking with our partners upstairs in an overall sort of comprehensive vision sort of idea. So right now we have that the Muni wants to take a safe system approach to all projects. And safe system is, the safe system approach comes out of the U.S. Department of Transportation. I think Brad Coy and Zach Hartman could speak more about it. But it's really looking at pretty much trying to prevent deaths and sort of that sort of harm from the infrastructure. Death and serious injuries are unacceptable is the first sort of tenet of that. The second, maintain existing transportation infrastructure, fix and use what we have. First, of course, we've heard a lot of people say, we can't maintain what we have, we don't like the way that the maintenance is going for the winter or the summer. Why are we building this when we already have this that isn't fixed? Another thing we heard a lot is provide transportation choices in how people move around the municipality. Another is reflect public priorities in transportation investments and decision making. And part of that is public comment, right? People say, why is this project happening now? I didn't hear about it. And again, everybody in this room knows that all these projects go through a pretty standard and pretty solid public outreach process. But for many members of the public, that doesn't reach them the way they want to be reached, or maybe it's based in sort of older understandings of how people engage with information. And then number 5, consider environmental sustainability. So, you know, some pushback about that, but also just thinking in general of what can we do to reduce sort of harms inflicted on the environment, or reduce environmental costs, or reduce mitigation efforts and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So I'll just go through these very quickly, and these are some more of the details. Really, they're just on the slide, so we can go through it. So after the TAC meeting last week, we talked with Brad and Zach and Brandon, and they said, look, we're looking at this safe system approach concept. Do you think this fits in with this plan? And to us, we think it absolutely does. It seems like this is sort of the overarching vision, because everything that we've heard from people so far really fits into this. So we added this new goal. This is now the first goal, and it's sort of the approach for the way that the municipality wants to look at long-range transportation planning. So one of the strategies, treat every project as a safety project. Whenever you're doing something, look at it and say, is there something else we could add here that can make it safer? Can we do ADA crosswalks? Is there a lighting issue we could deal with? And again, I know a lot of these projects are budgeted not to have that stuff, but that's sort of thinking about moving in that direction. The second, set a modal hierarchy. Now this is a pretty substantial one, right? When trade-offs are required, prioritize improvement needs based on vulnerability of users. The following hierarchy: pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, freight vehicles, personal vehicles. So these are goals and strategies. These are aspirational at this point, but this is where things stand. Next slide, please. Maintain existing transportation infrastructure, fix and use what we have. First thing on this, prioritize operational maintenance. Things like snow clearing, gravel sweeping, first for people walking, rolling, or biking. That sort of fits in the hierarchy we just saw. And also, you know, create a list of which facilities get plowed first or maintained first. And another one too, we've heard a lot more recently, is allow for adaptive use of infrastructure for maintenance. This is really about snow storage, right? Say we have a facility that has a lot of lanes, there's plenty of capacity there. Thinking about using the existing infrastructure we have to also deal with some of these maintenance issues. What if you could take one of those lanes and use it for snow storage? I know we've had that with other bike lane discussions, whether it's permanent, temporary. But again, if it turns out we do have all this right of way, we need a place to put snow, and maybe we can just put it in a lane and leave it there. That might be a nice way that we don't have to worry about trucking it, we don't have to moving it, or it's easier to plow, et cetera, et cetera. So thinking about that, how can we use what we have and use it effectively? Next slide, please. Provide transportation choices and how people move around the municipality. One, evaluate proposed projects based on a range of travel needs and options. You know, that we kind of looked at that, but thinking, does this investment of public money serve enhancing options and choices, and really serve that? Number 2, plan and build infrastructure consistent with mode share targets. This is a really important one, and this came out of you know, something that sponsors really focused on, especially coming out back from Finland and saying, Finland sets what they want their modal share to be, and then they build their infrastructure accordingly, right? And this is a bit different because it is saying that the infrastructure we build changes the behavior of the users. That's, you know, it doesn't happen that often that we look at things that way in the United States. But this is, part of this would be to set mode share targets and say, okay, this is going to be the mode share target, maybe for this area town, maybe for this facility, maybe for anything like that, but just thinking of that in a very proactive fashion. So other cities have done that. You know, I think Portland set theirs for bicycle for 20% or 25%. And then they actually used that when they were setting up their minimum bike parking requirements to say this now justifies us building this infrastructure because we're trying to meet this goal. So that's where that one's going. 3, enhance the financial sustainability of public transportation, enabling increased frequency and expanded service coverage. This is crucial because we have public transit, we spend a lot of money on it, and then we sort of let it go for itself and we say, well, we'll get the federal funding for public transit. There are other things we can do to make public transit more robust, to get them more funding, more users, the kind of things that help them operate, right? It's not going to become its own sort of enterprise entity, I don't think, that operates on its own, but thinking about what are the changes we can make to our land use in our streets that make it more attractive for people to use transit, which enhances the sort of long-term stability of transit. Number 4, oh, 2 threes here, sorry, this is a draft still working. Make it easier for people to link different types of transportation for the same trip, like bike to the bus or walk to the bus or drive somewhere and then take the bus. This is something too, we have this fantastic transit system, we have bike racks everywhere, but you see a lot of people, they don't connect that they can bike to the bus and ride that somewhere and make that trip to be a multimodal trip rather than just a single-use trip. And so help people see that what we have, what exists, and how you can use that to get where they need to go without having to make it big changes. And then 4, which should be 5, connect outlying communities to the MOA, within the MOA. So that, of course, is talking about Eagle River, Chugach, Birchwood, and Girdwood. Next slide, please. Reflect public priorities in transportation investment and decision making. Again, I apologize, this is a really long one. Engage the public in project planning. This is really thinking about, okay, well, how can we get people so they feel more meaningfully engaged? Yes, we get tons of comments, people go to meetings, but there's something there that maybe there's something else we can do to get so people say, oh, I remember this project, I understand why it's happening. For example, we were on another project, we were down here on 4th, and 3rd Avenue radicals are saying, why you're fixing the lights? Why don't you fix, the lanes at the same time? Why don't you do this or that? And it's one of those things. They've been engaged the whole time, but there's a piece there. Maybe it's an education piece to say, well, this goes back to 10 years ago, maybe the TIP or the STIP at that time. So looking at that and just really focusing on educating the public, helping the public feel really engaged. Number 2, move away from default metrics that prioritize moving vehicles fast or in high volumes over other community priorities. Be wary of the impacts of induced demand. Number 3, implement adopted land use and transportation plans. That kind of goes back to the first strategy. A lot of people say we have so many plans, we never actually do anything about them, we never implement. So there's already a lot of stuff, and people just say, we did that plan, let's do it. We made the Mountain View neighborhood plan, we did the Fairview neighborhood plan, we did the Spinard Corridor plan, let's just do it. So that's hard to do, but it's also easy to do because some of that work's already been done. We just say, it's here, we're going to make it happen. 4, regularly revisit the CIP project list and assessment and scoring criteria for the MIA capital improvement project list. And really look at, do we still need this project? This has been here for 10, 20, whatever years. Is it something that we still need? Does it meet our priorities? Do we have the money for it? Do we have the long-term funding for it? So just not to have a critical eye, but have sort of keep those lists under fresh eyes and under fresh scrutiny to make sure that we're meeting the needs of what the public wants and also we're being financially sustainable. 5, assess design standards for how roads are built, including design criteria manual, in accordance with community needs on a regular basis. That includes updating the DCM, the design criteria manual, which might include some specific designs for Girdwood or Eagle River, Birchwood. Girdwood, they said, look, we have a different sort of community here. We want our streets to look a little bit different, and they don't feel that the DCM currently allows them to do that through the existing regulations. We've seen that other places too, where a project has to get a bunch of waivers to do what's already in the plan. So this would say, let's just make the rules or the standards allow people to do what they already thought they were going to get out of the plans. And number 6, require infrastructure projects to justify how they align with adopted land use or neighborhood plans. So this, think of the 2040 plan, land use plan, has a lot of areas and say this is a town center, a commercial center, a neighborhood center. But then you see the transportation infrastructure around that, and it doesn't quite align with the way that town center was envisioned, a sort of walkable, pleasant, quiet place where people can kind of move from business to business, because the transportation infrastructure is operating under a different set of values, right? Maybe in that specific area, the transportation infrastructure is trying to move people quickly from point A to point B, while the land use plan map is trying to keep people in that place and have them moving around and mixing. There are a couple of specific intersections like that, where it's designated as a place that's supposed to be designed around people, but the transportation is largely not that way. Next slide, please. And then the last one, consider environmental sustainability. Provide more options for transitions to more energy efficient modes of transportation, such as bicycles, transit, and active transportation. Reduce negative ecological health impacts from the transportation system. Light, noise, pollution, that sort of thing. And then 3, align transportation and infrastructure investments with the municipality's climate action plan. We heard from a lot of people that said, we spent years working on that climate action plan. Are we gonna, is it still in effect? Are we still gonna use it? And so depending on where that goes, it would be nice to align that with some of this and say, yes, it's true. I know in Alaska that transportation is not the biggest source of emissions, but in terms of climate impact, changing transportation emissions can have some positive results in that. Next slide, please. So next steps, we've had some discussions about thinking about specific processes maybe for Eagle River and Kerwood. Maybe they would have their own sort of page in the strategy document, because their values and priorities really might be different from the bowl, and their funding strategies might be different from what's in the bowl. And right now, it's just very difficult to say that the Anchorage municipality has one unified vision for how they would like to see long-term management of transportation infrastructure. I think that's sort of a tough pill to swallow, but that's what we've seen through this process. And we don't want any of those communities to feel left out. So we have a bit of funding left in this project, and now we're thinking about maybe dedicating some of that to Eagle River and Kerwood, just so they can spend a little more time focusing on what they think their needs will be, so they don't get sort of left out of this document. Finalize the document, then we need to set a date for the Planning and Zoning Commission. After we do that, then we'll go to the Federation of Community Councils, talk to the community councils, do this sort of, it's probably a month or 2 months of going around just talking to people, and then whenever people invite us, we're glad to go. And then it would be a review and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Assembly. Next slide, please. That's all. Any questions I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions from the committee? Yeah. I'll save my questions for later maybe, but how about any questions from the public? Seeing none, thank you for your presentation, Daniel. The next item is item 6B, STIP update. For a presentation here.
I believe DOT will be giving that. I thought Adam Moser was giving that presentation, but I don't see him online. Adam Moser, are you online? Okay, Ben White, are you going to be giving presentation on this?
Yeah, I can provide a real quick update if that's what you need.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So essentially what we know, the STIP team is working to get the STIP Amendment 1 out for public comment sometime soon. I think they're targeting Friday this week, but I've also heard that it could be sometime next week, but it's coming fairly quickly. And so our intent is to get that out for 30 days and then respond to comments. They are pushing to get this wrapped up still this fiscal year, which ends September 30th, but the intent is to get it done sooner than that. So.
Thanks, Ben. Any
Yep.
comments or questions from the committee? Hearing none. How about from the public? Questions or comments? And it doesn't look like we have any there either. Yeah, thanks. We're on to, we aren't on to anything. Are there any further project or plan updates, Aaron?
No, there's not. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 7. Does anybody on the committee have any comments to add today?
I have a comment.
You do, good.
So this is probably my last policy committee meeting, so I've enjoyed it. We'll see who's here next month, so likely will not be me. So.
It's been good sitting next
Appreciate
to you
it,
for
Sean.
the
Thank
last
you.
6 or 7 months. So, yeah, thanks for your contribution there. Anybody else? No? How about the public? Any comments from the public? Doesn't look like it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move to adjourn.
So I'm going to give Mr. Colhase the movement, and I bet I can give that second to Mr. Levy. Any objections to approving that motion? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 2:04. It went pretty quick.